Hi there, I'm Ross for Orwell and welcome back to another of our community conversations in association with the Orwell Cost of Living Toolkit, the new online resource that connects our communities to the tools and services across the region that really make a difference. So we've got another fantastic guest today, someone that has an organisation in the Ipswich region but works with customers all over our kind of our communities. Is Annie Clements from Autism and ADHD. Annie, how you doing? You okay?
Yeah, I'm fine, Russ. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thanks for your time today. These podcasts are in association with our Cost of Living Toolkit, which we've had running for a while now. And what we wanted to do is to kind of engage with local organisations who may have seen some effect of, the past few months, throughout COVID and now throughout the cost of living crisis that we have at the moment, and kind of just share what kind of support is out there, what kind of services are out there for people that may need some of the services that we talk about today. For people that haven't come across autism and ADHD, can you give us a little bit of a synopsis of kind of like how you got started and how you help your communities?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been doing support work within our community for over 30 years, but Autism and ADHD is an organisation I started 11 years ago. And that came from running lots of different projects and being involved in lots of different things. I used to work for the council. I was a youth worker. Just had my fingers in a lot of pies, really. But suddenly found myself in the neurodivergent community following the diagnosis of our middle son, Tom, when he was just 2.5. And Tom still lives with us. He's 24/7 care. He's scarily now 32. And then found out that our elder daughter and our younger son were equally in that space. So we've been on quite a journey as a family, but was always involved in that space professionally and was sort of joining two bits together, I suppose, for want of a better way of putting that. Autism and ADHD as an organisation is a not-for-profit social enterprise, limited by guarantee. That came out of me having a year with the School for Social Entrepreneurs, of which I'm now a fellow of, and I'm really proud to be a part of that journey about how the third sector is changing in that space and looking for different ways to make them more sustainable, which is really important. And it started off very much as formalising, I suppose, what I was already doing, but spent a whole day in the university just thrashing out all the things that don't work and come up with solutions for that. And it was very localized at that point. I just saw it as, how can we make things better for the families that I'm already working with? So we brought Autism and ADHD together, which at that point you had to go to different organizations to get different support. We started to work with people before they got their diagnosis, which was unheard of back then. We didn't close people's files down. Once they were with us, they could continue to access us, So there was lots of sort of strategic stuff that we were like, no, this isn't working, so let's just do this differently. What I hadn't realised until a few years later was because we started the ball rolling and there were other organisations watching what we were doing and they started to change things too. We won an award for that. And having win an award for something that you didn't even know you'd done is actually was quite a bit of a shock, really. Very, very grateful because it opened doors for us that we wouldn't have now. And those doors have now enabled us to work all over the world. We don't just work here in sunny Suffolk anymore. We work with the British Army, we work with the Civil Service. There's so many different places now that we connect into, and we're now building what we call a partnership program where we're working with organisations, schools, again looking at it globally, heavily involved in the sport industry at the moment, about it being seen as a therapeutic way of supporting those of us that fall into this diagnostic criteria. And we're not out of a job yet, I think it would be fair to say, sadly, because so many of the systems, especially here in the UK, are just broken at the moment, not through issues with staff or anything like that. I think a lot of staff within education and health can get a bit of a bad press, but they're working within a system that isn't working. It hasn't kept up with the times and the changes that have come in off the back of the fact that we as a community are just getting bigger and bigger. And depending on where you look for your statistics, we're anything between 25 to 40% of the population now. We're not a small minority little group of people that need something a bit different. We've now got to look at that from a society perspective about how we can make that change.
Yeah, it's funny, from all the people that I chat to on the podcast, their organisations or their groups or their communities come out of a need where they felt there was an itch that needed to be scratched, somewhere, something that needed to be done. For your family in that scenario when your son was diagnosed that time ago, was that just that, you kind of, I've gone through that myself, as with my son, and it's kind of like, what now, for a lot of people, whether that, that child is diagnosed early on or whether it's later in life, with more and more adults being diagnosed now as well. How did you find it when, you were in that situation? I'm guessing, like me, it's kind of like, right, I've been given this news, now what?
Very much like a rabbit in headlights, I think would be fair to say, even with the professional background that both my husband and myself had. It's so different when you're suddenly in that space as a parent and it's your child. Tom had significant birth trauma when he was born, and that was why it was picked up as early as it was. Like I say, he was only 2.5, and I think it would be fair to say the professionals at that point, because that was 94, were learning just as much as we were. There was very little information out there. We were still having to go to the library, Ross. The internet hadn't arrived at that point.
Yeah.
It doesn't it? It's quite scary, really. But we didn't have computers and mobile phones and internet or anything like that. If we wanted to know anything, we had to go to the library, and the books that were in the libraries were really old versions about what autism was, and I can remember finding this telephone number and calling it from the National Autistic Society, and turned out to be a residential placement in Bury that is still there, that the National Autistic Society was running at the time. I always remember this guy answered the phone. I said, well, found out yesterday that our son had got an autistic spectrum disorder. I'm just ringing around and, finding what's going on. And he went, you sound terribly calm for someone who's just found out their child is autistic. And that was the first thing that sort of made me think, well, this may be a lot bigger than maybe I think it is. And we were then very much learning as we went. There weren't support groups. There weren't all of that stuff there. Then there was people like myself who were setting them up. We were part of that cohort of parents that were finding our feet and coming together as groups. That wasn't there before, and so that was a real tip point, I suppose. And I think the sad thing for me is, while there's an awful lot of stuff that has moved forward, there's still an awful lot of stuff that hasn't. And that sense of feeling scared, completely out of our depth. I don't know how to help my own child. How am I going to get through this? I was pregnant with Sam at the time as well. And my daughter was struggling. We didn't know then, especially being a female, that was where she was. We just thought it was an attention thing because we were so caught up at that point with Tom. And flying by the seat of a bum, I think, is where we were. And the sad thing about it, Ross, I'm sure you'll see it as well, there's still that real sense of parents being caught in that same trap. And I've reached a point of like, all the stuff that we've doing, while it's helped, has maybe not had the right colour ribbon around it. We need a different mindset, a different way of looking at this. And now is the time to make that shift.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like you say, I think a lot of people listen to this who may be in that situation now can kind of see it, similar to your situation, but a little bit different. So, we have the internet now and we're able to do that. But from a dad's perspective, in that moment, that can be the best thing in the world and the worst thing in the world, because you can go on the internet and find anything. There's nothing there that's kind of like, you don't know the background about it. You don't know where that's coming from. And also, you go through the diagnosis process, and then maybe you go through a government-backed introductory scheme that some of them have, but then you that's it, you're there. And it's knowing where to turn at that point. And I think that's one of the the great assets of what you guys do is and that's the reason for today. We want to share this sort of information, because unless you know it's out there, you just don't know.
No, you don't. And that's, even with the internet, it's still quite hard to pin that down.
Yeah.
And it fit your life and your life as your family. And that's the bit that it's still a bit, for me, this is the support, but it's done this way. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, none of us need that. We need it to connect with who we are as within our family, how we parent, how our kids are, what our lives are, where we work. Do you know what I mean? There's so many parameters around that. And that's one of the reasons why when we created the support structure that we offer, those appointments are completely under those people's control. We don't dictate how often they come and see us, or how they see us, or what, up to a point, what time of day. It's like it has to fit in with that person, not us. It's our job to fit in with you, not the other way around, if you like.
Yeah. And for people that don't know, I'd love to speak about some of the kind of services that you offer in the organisation. I know, there's that you have an email service where anyone can get in touch, and that's a great thing, like you say, because you can use it as little or as often as you can. You got, you great response times, and you're able to do that at your own pace. I think for many families who are working, who are looking after children, that kind of thing, that's a real help, because you're able to just get in touch as and when suits you. But can you tell us a little bit of some of the other services that you guys offer as well?
Absolutely. So obviously there's good old social media, and social media takes a bad rap, but I have to say it's what's changing the perception of autism and ADHD in a very positive sense. So it's a good place to be. We've got our main autism and ADHD page, which is quite broad and quite generic, because we've got a massive global over 200,000 people that we have on there that we connect into, which I'm very proud of, that we have that privilege of people listen to what we've got to say. Also our closed group, which is We're All in This Together, which we started right at the beginning of COVID, just for people to be able to talk to each other. They were suddenly stuck in their homes and couldn't have that same connection, but that's grown substantially. There's a lot more sort of generalized information and information about our coffee mornings and all of those sort of things go into there, as well as practical help that parents are helping each other with in that space around the chats and things. We then have a monthly training that goes out at the end of every month, which costs £2.50, and it covers all sorts of things. Our next one is for grandparents and extended family members and friends, because they do so much care and support for us as families, but no one gives them any information at all. And we then as parents end up having to do that break bit in the middle, and no disrespect to our own parents and what have you, we've got enough going on in our own house. We want you to go and find out your own information if at all possible. So they get recorded, so they go out live. You can join us live, but they're also recorded. And so as long as you've registered, my dog's now going to bark for you.
No, that's fine. That's okay.
Oh, that's right. Stop. As long as you've registered, you'll get sent that recording, and that recording is available for you for 7 days. So people who are working, who it's not a good time because of nursery pickups or whatever, just life, they can still access that information. So we've got that. Like you say, we have stuff that goes out on our newsletter and all of those sort of bits and pieces too. We have a membership site which has currently got over 20 odd trainings in there, and there's a new one get added to that every month. Equally, a Facebook community off the back of that, which is a monthly subscription, and then we have our bespoke one-to-one sessions that come in off the back of that. So we try and hit it at different points about where people are, different ways that people can access perhaps the same information but in a different way, because we know not everybody wants it in this, we're all different, aren't we, about how we access information. So it's also about creating that variance around where that is. We're looking to put on a big conference in October, which will be Suffolk based. I go all over the country and talk and give talks, and people literally just have to contact us if they want us to go in and set up something like that locally for them, and we'll do our best to respond to that. So yeah, lots of different ways that people can listen to what we've got to say, but we always encourage people, don't just listen to us, right? We have our own unique way of how we talk about autism and ADHD that's come very much from our lived experience. All of my team are living it every day too, so they've all either got a diagnosis themselves or parenting children or both, the same as myself, which I think adds something very important to the way that we discuss what we do. So it is very real hands-on stuff. Do you know what I mean? I always remember way back, so God is just telling to me, well, if they get really upset in the supermarket, you just need to take them out. Yeah, with my shop full of
yeah, just run out the shop with your shopping, you'll be fine.
And wait for them to calm down and then bring them back in. And so, yeah, we'll just sit in the car for 3 hours with my trolley full of food that I haven't paid for and wait to, it's like, it's not practical to do that, do you know? So we've sort of been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Everyone in the team is in that space. So do we know everything? No, because it's constantly changing and new stuff's coming through, and we're learning more all the time, which is a good position to be in now. That research is flowing fast, which I'm not going to fault on any level whatsoever. It's really, really important. And we're always learning. Everyone I speak to, I'm learning something from them just the same as they're learning from us. It's very much a two-way exchange. Have we covered every baseline? No. But I think it's also about accepting that we as an organisation don't need to cover all of it. There's lots of us now, and that's a good thing. And it's finding those different spaces that meet what your particular need is at that point.
Yeah, you make a really great point there, in that, all the people that work with you guys are people who are with lived experience. And I think that's hugely beneficial to those who are either at the point of diagnosis or later on, any point in time, because sometimes you need someone that's removed from the situation to have conversations with. With the best will in the world, you can have conversations with family members, you can have conversations with friends, but for someone to sit there and to know what you're going through, I think is huge, and there's a huge benefit of that. You mentioned about the Facebook page, which was born out of COVID, as you say, the all in this together page, and we've been through that COVID period, and now we're kind of going through another kind of period now with the cost of living crisis. From your point of view, what have you seen in your communities more recently, and has that meant that more support has been needed from your part?
Whenever there's a crisis, and I mean that in the broadest possible terms, for business, we're all, as you are, Ross, we're all just living normal family lives here. We just happen to be doing that through a neurodivergent filter, which, considering the world hasn't quite got as accessible as we need it to be, is blinking hard work. And unless you live it, you wouldn't really grasp just how hard that is. The fight that we have with everything that we're trying to access, at a point when we're still feeling very green, we're not understanding things, we might not be getting a lot of sleep, all of that stuff is thrown into the mix. That's just normal. You then throw the situation that we're in now into that, and it just multiplies on a level that is just unbelievable. So many of our adults, because of lack of knowledge when they were kids, are now quite, living in trauma, very isolated. The system might not even know they're there. Their benefits and those sort of things have not increased for years, and yet they're still in that situation of trying to manage with higher costs and what have you. And because of the issues they have around communication and feeling confident about picking up the phone and what to do with that, they're not asking for help in a way that you might expect them to, or they might not have that support structure around, which I think the community assumes that structure is there, but it just isn't. And because the services themselves are falling apart, it isn't just the central thing. So the change of budgets needing to be differentiated within family homes and what have you, there's still a change, and autism doesn't cope well with change, as you know, because of where our imagination fracture sits. And so all of these things just add more and more and more stuff into the plow. So that side of things alone has been very, very hard. You've then got the fact that systems within education, social care and health are in themselves in a big muddle at the moment for all manner of reasons. Many parents are struggling to find the right education provision for their child, and having to make that decision of whether or not we homeschool or don't homeschool. And if you make that decision that you're going to homeschool, that may mean you've got to leave your job, and you've got to make that change. And there's another big income thing that's coming in off the back of that side of things. And it's also that responsibility, and you're not getting that normal break from your child from 9 till 3, where, you know, most parents wave goodbye to their kids in the morning, and at least they've got a little bit of maneuverable space. Many of our parents haven't got that space, and they're dealing with children that are still, you're still learning how to educate them, learning how to help them move forward. Everybody's, you know, that whole walking on eggshells situation, and it's not easy. And people that are waiting for diagnosis, in some cases for years. I mean, Cambridge's list is 4 years wait, and that's just untenable. It's a safeguarding issue for me, where we've still got systems that won't respond to need if that diagnosis has not been confirmed. So what are these people supposed to do in the meantime with that, and the damage it can do to them around their self-esteem, their self-worth? That's what then generates that need to access mental health provision and all of those sort of things. Autism on its own doesn't do that. It's the lack of the accessibility that's there that does that. And because businesses are also having to, you know, tighten their belts and do the things, the changes that we would have wanted them to engage in, they're now being put on the back burner for a bit longer, and a bit longer for this and a bit longer for that. And so it's like a stone that goes into a pond and it ripples out across the whole of the community. That's challenging for everybody. When you put neurodivergence in the mix, where that normal support structure you would expect to be there now isn't, you're just multiplying that by hundreds, and that's actually really scary. And so organizations like us, where there is no provision in the same way through social care, health or education, it comes down the ladder to third sector, you know, to the voluntary organizations. And we're now struggling too because of that. Do you know what I mean? The same reason of looking at different ways of working, different ways to cut costs. You know, we've moved out of our office and gone back to home-based working. So we've lost the rent costs. You see what I mean? And so it's not ideal, but it's where we need to be right now. And being able to be flexible, I actually think it's one of the strengths of third sector, is that we can turn things around on a penny quite quickly. We haven't got this great big corporate thing sitting above us where you have to have 60 meetings to make a decision type scenario. I have got a small team. I always wanted a small team. I didn't want it to be this massive heaving thing. So we're always, because I wanted it to feel like another family for my team, not just, you know, go anything, but it means that we can keep the quality at a good standard and that everybody's on the same plane. And that's also really important to me. So we're always looking, like with these online situations that we've now got, the offers that we can do through that, we can reach a lot of people, but don't have to increase my team size, which keeps our costs low. So we're always looking at how we can be creative in that space. But it's scary out there at the moment. Is there light at the end of the tunnel? I think we're all hoping that there is. I think the light will come because people will themselves make changes, not because the system itself will change.
Yeah. And you mentioned there about the kind of the wait. Some people, families have around diagnosis, and whether that's for a child or maybe that's for an adult who maybe has lived with autism and just hasn't known it, until later on in their life. And I think that's the beauty of the support that you offer as well, because I think I'm right in thinking that you don't directly need diagnosis to enable to engage. And I think when I look back in my own experience, I think that was the case for us at that time as well, where we didn't have, we were about to have diagnosis and that kind of stuff, go through the tests and that kind of thing, but it's kind of like, what can we get help here? And for a lot of the normal services that you're kind of signposted to, the wall stops there, because you have to have a diagnosis to then move along in the process. That must be a huge benefit to the families that you work with.
I think so, because it helps them make sense of where they are emotionally. It's a big emotional journey to get your head round. And the comment that you'd said about coming to a lived experience team for support, the comments we get from that are just so heartwarming, really, and can be quite upsetting for that person, either at the end of a phone or in a face-to-face situation. We get lots of tears about, but I can't tell you how amazing it is that I'm finally sitting with someone that understands me, that gets this, that knows what it's like. I feel like I've really struggled to find that, and we all know what it feels like to be heard and valued for who we are. And we talk a lot about inclusion. We all know what it feels like to feel included and how amazing that can be, but we also know what it feels like to not feel included. And a huge number of our community, especially at that beginning bit, will be, they don't feel included, they're struggling, no one really understands. They may have family and friends, however well-meaning, who are saying, why do you want to label your child? They're fine as they are, just leave them, you're making a big fuss about nothing. Or if you just parented differently, they would be fine. All of this sort of almost gaslighting and judgment that goes on all over the place. And we certainly don't see our diagnosis as a label. I didn't get diagnosed with ADHD until I was in my 40s, very much part of that parents making sense of things from their journey that they've been on with their children. And I think for me, it's part of my identity, it's part of who I am. It's not an add-on, everything goes through my ADHD personality. We all go through the same timeline benchmarks, we're still stroppy teenagers, and we're still defiant 2-year-olds and all of those sorts of things, but it's going through a different brain filter. And if you've not been given that information of what to do, or you've been told you've got to wait 3 years to find out whether or not you can do it, the damage that can get done to a whole family, not just that child, during that period of time can be huge. And they don't necessarily move forward from that, maybe forever. And that's really sad. And we've got to stop that. So being able to come to organisations like us, showing them different ways to communicate, different ways to live life on a day-to-day basis, enables them to move forward and think, I can do this, I can parent my children, I can move forward. We've just got to tweak it here and move it there. It gives them confidence around being able to fight for systems and support within education. And those are because they know now they're not making a fuss, they're not asking for too much. The number of times that I don't want to go in school and make a fuss, I don't want them to think, just stop, right? You're entitled to make a fuss. You're the one person, you'll fight for your child more than anybody else will ever fight for your child. You're the best advocate they will ever have. So giving parents confidence to suddenly be thrown into a space that they never thought they were going to have to do. When you have a child, you don't think you're going to have to fight for them to get the right education and to not feel scared every time they leave the house. You don't think you're going to have to do that. And many parents are suddenly, they're equally green in that area, and why would they not be? And so it's also showing them those skills, how to be in a meeting, what forms do you have to fill in, where do you have to go with that. It's not just about the parenting, there's all this other stuff that we're suddenly thrown into a space of having to navigate, applying for their disability living allowances and know what you're entitled to and where all those things sit. They're a world that we never many of us never even knew existed. You know, that wasn't part of our family network, if you know what I mean. And we suddenly have to learn this stuff really fast. Being able to get that before you've got your magic piece of paper that says yes or no becomes really, really important. Personally, I think all schools, all spaces are moving to a place of, you know, you need to think that everyone that's coming into your space is a neurodivergent individual, because neurotypical people can survive in those spaces. We can't do that the other way around. And lots of people will benefit. It's like visual timetables, all right? And people go, well, we don't know whether they're autistic or not, so I don't know whether they need a timetable. And I said, how many of you as adults, if you look in a school, have got a calendar that you live by every day? Well, all of us. Hello. It's like, we all need to know about a calendar. There's nothing to stop you supporting those calendar creations when they're 2, 3, 4 years old. I've never known anyone be harmed from a visual timetable. So should we just go there, make that part of curriculum, that everyone learns how to manage their time and their timetables and what that's going to look like? What skill are we giving them long term? That's just huge. And so, but that is a neurodivergent resource, if you like, that was created out of that space, but it works for everybody. So that's where the shift's got to come, because then those parents who are they, aren't they, don't really know, kids who are really distressed, they're accessing those things that actually help them and stop that trauma from day one. And for me, that's a no-brainer.
And I know one of the, you touched upon it there, but one of the other things that you guys are passionate about is to actually going into organizations, talking to organizations, you know, with the passion to have more inclusion when it comes to work, you know, and those statistics around, you know, how many people with autism or ADHD are in full-time work is you know, is mind blowing in that respect. What has been the response to the training that you guys give to organizations?
Right. So it varies from place to place. What we don't want it to become is a tick box exercise. Of, oh, we've done the autism training, so we can tick that. It's about helping businesses, whatever those businesses are, like I say, sports provision, the little coffee shop, a hairdressers, it doesn't matter. We access all of those because we do. Do you know what I mean? Like there's only some places that and it's helping them see it's a culture change, not just it's not like putting in a ramp or a disabled toilet. It's a mindset shift. All right. So inclusion is both a verb and an emotion. All right. So like we said, we know what it feels like to be included and not. So emotionally, we can make sense of that. But therefore, we have to become more inclusive. And that, okay, we're talking about neurodivergence today, but that could be over someone's race, the color of their skin, their, you know, their heritage, whatever that may be. And ultimately, inclusion is about kindness and respect for the person in front of you. It's not rocket science. And we get caught up with red tape and forms and stuff. And it's like, just be kind to people. It's really not that hard. And I think we forget that sometimes about where that sits. So when we go in and deliver a training to a business, we're talking about that cultural shift. You know, you can learn so much. You want all of your staff to be able to be here on time every day. You want all of your staff to feel relaxed at work so their output is more. So let's talk about that holistically. Of course, we're going to give them information specifically around neurodivergence and what that is and what those adjustments need to be. But I think people get caught up thinking they're massive and they're not actually. So much clearer communication. I mean, who doesn't want that? No, who doesn't want to know whether they've got to open that email today, or actually we can leave that till Friday. But it says that in the header. You need to read this one today, you know, and I need an answer by today. It means that, oh right, I need to get in there and do that one now. Who wouldn't like to have really clear agendas before they go into a meeting instead of just any other business? What the hell's that? Do you know what I mean? It's all that sort of stuff. Some job descriptions are atrocious. I always remember a guy that we were supporting. He got a degree, very good from a qualification perspective, was really struggling around holding down his job because of that lack of accessibility that was there. And there was this wonderful job spec, and it was almost like it was written for him. And he went, I don't know if I can do it. And I went, tell me why. And he said, well, it says contribute to team meetings. Pretty standard thing on a job spec. And I said, why are you struggling with that? Well, what do they want me to contribute? Have I got to bring cake? Do a PowerPoint every week? I don't know what I've got to do. So how do I know if I can do that job? And so we'd all benefit from those changes being made. And the great thing about it is when you work with a business to get them to review their communication structure, once they've done it, they've done it. It's not like they have to do it constantly. But it's also creating that culture of just think about what you've just written and what you've just said. And is that actually really, really clear for that person to be able to access that? Looking at the environments that their staff teams work in, colours on walls have got far much more impact than people think that they do. And we're always saying you want pale greens and pale blues and that sort of pale light, everything pastel colour. Don't have these bright red walls. They make everybody angry, to be fair. It's quite an emotional connection around colour about where that sort of stuff sits. But make sure your signs are clear. Look at your lighting. Don't put stripy blinds up at windows that then fracture light when it comes through. Just have proper roller blinds, please. Just be sensible about this. So they're quite systematic changes that businesses can bring in gradually over time. And when they're then looking at the people that are coming through their door, so if you think about a sports centre, trampoline, and anything where you've got people accessing a service live, so make sure you've given them enough information when they're looking at your website. Don't just put up lovely photos. They want to know where to park. They want to know how much the car park's going to be. What can they bring in? Equally, what can they not bring in? Can they, how long can they be there for? Do you need money for a locker? That's my big bugbears with swimming pools. It's like they never tell you what coinage you need to operate the damn locker, and then you've never got what it is. And so just put it on the damn website. It's what they're supposed to be there for. But it's just provide more information. Show pictures of the toilets so the kids know what the loos look like. Spend a lot of my life talking about toilets, but it's helping them see that just by adding more information, more people will start coming through their door. It isn't about always creating low sensory sessions. That sort of stuff needs to be there all the time, because not all of our community need low sensory sessions. Some of our community needs the higher sensory experience. And if you've not made those adjustments in that space too, then your space is still not accessible just by creating a low sensory session. That isn't what it's an add-on, another tick box situation. Oh, we'll throw in a low sensory session and then we're covering that. No, you're not. You're half covering it, and that's not what we actually need it to be. It's great that they're coming, don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking that they're there, but it's like, come on guys, we now need you to take the next bit. And when you think we're making up a big part of the population now, it makes business sense, let alone anything else. Do you really want your offer to be inaccessible to 25 to 40% of the population? I wouldn't. No. So come on, guys, get with the program. And when you look at that from an employment perspective, the skills we bring to the workplace are huge. And the world needs them now more than ever, actually. And, the thing that we're sitting here talking on today has come from a neurodivergent brain somewhere in the system. So mobile phones, internet, emails, all of those things have come from neurodivergent problem-solving brains and looking for those solutions. We wouldn't be where we are now if it wasn't for our community. We now need to build on that. And there are some businesses that are starting to see the skills that we bring and looking at how they can. A bizarre one, for example, is diamond cutters. Right, so diamond cutters in London actually employ quite a high number of autistic people that have got that hyper visualization skill.
Okay.
Because they can see the precise, how to cut in a very precise way. Wow. Because of that hyper focus that they've actually got. And so we're getting there, but it's just, come on.
you You mentioned there about kind of building on that from now this point onwards. You know, for you guys at Autism and ADHD, what does the rest of 2023 hold? I mean, you mentioned that you've probably a conference later on in the year, but what else are you?
In October, we've got some really lovely people that we connect with, incredible speakers with some real lived experience, as well as the professional knowledge that I've got, that we really want to bring into Suffolk, because if not, Suffolk miss out, and that's not good enough. So we're desperate to put that together. A big program that I'm involved in Canada, bizarrely, is the neurodefense program. So, and we're looking at how we spread that out. So just to explain what that is, it originally started through just a basic free ADHD training during World ADHD Month, not last year, but the year before. And this guy contacted me literally 2 seconds after the training had closed down. And he said, "Can I share this with my team?" And I went, "I think we can offer you something a bit more than, a free training that we just done for thingy." I said, have me have a chat. Turned out he was the national coach for martial arts for Canada.
Okay. And
from that initial chat, which sort of blew me away anyway, to where we are now, Jim and myself and 2 other people over in Canada, equally neurodivergent in their own right, have now created what's called a neurodefense program, which is specifically geared at sport industry. We know that physical activity is good for us, not just from a health perspective, but it also helps address some of those sensory processing issues around our balance and vestibular issues and those sort of things, without it being looked at as therapy. Again, we're normalizing a thing rather than it becoming this special addy thing that comes in from the middle. Martial arts and climbing are 2 areas that we know are hugely beneficial. Horse riding as well, because central core work and all the stuff that goes on with that. But we started with martial arts because that's Jim's speciality, got lots of contacts. Jim has created what he calls his neurodefense program, which involves bringing in young leaders. They're all trained in autism. They're all shown how to deliver that sport within an autism appropriate and accessible way. They then obviously will grow on to be owners and developers across their sport. So it will spread out, again, Stone Pond scenario about where this goes. And we know that martial arts can be really good on lots of different levels. So there's obviously the physical stuff and the central core strengthening, arm strengthening, what have you. But it's also slowly introducing that socialization and communication structure that comes into that, without it being a team sport. All right, it's something that you're still doing on an individual basis and help and develop those skills, but you're also training a community in how to connect with neurodivergent individuals. So it increases that spread again. So that's about to launch this year. We're really, really excited about that. We've got some incredible feedback that's coming back from there. But we've got other industries within sport that are already interested in looking at how they can introduce something very similar. So climbing, I used to climb, very much an ADHD thing, I have to say. We like seeing the whole problem, and you can absolutely do that when you're hanging from the side of a cliff. So, but it's helping people see that you can create a lifestyle that enables you to thrive if you're just paying attention, and you're not scattergunning where you go. You've got a structure. You've been given information about what's best and how you move that forward. And I think that's what we're now trying to do, is open up that community experience. My big agenda is we're creating lifestyles that allow you to thrive. That includes looking at people's physical health, their mental health. What are the right foods to eat here? And it's not dictating or anything, it's giving people options about how to move that stuff forward, and creating a lifestyle that looks after you. You know, if you've got a diagnosis of diabetes, you'd be given that information. You'd be given that, this is what you now need to do. You need to do this and adjust that and move that. We don't get that, do we, Ross? So it's what can we do to provide that now? Because for me, that's the next big step.
Yeah. And for people watching this who want to get in touch, who want to reach out with the services, what's the best way of doing that? I guess via the website, would that be the best way?
Website or the social media, they're the two main points of reference. So there's no telephone line, mainly because people get frustrated waiting for someone to answer the phone, and that's not helpful, and it's actually quite difficult to navigate. So there's a contact form on the website to fill in. The website clearly says what we do, but equally what we don't. So people are not wasting their time. I think that's just as important. You can state on the contact form whether you want us to call you or email you, which is the best way for us to reach you, because obviously that's different about how people know that communication to take place. And you can just write a short piece on there about, you know, what they need some help with and come through that way. But equally through social media, get involved in the group, get involved on the page. You can contact us through the Facebook Messenger route with that too. That's another way to get hold of us. So we're monitoring those places all the time.
And equally, you know, we, as part of Orwell Housing, we have a large, thriving business community around us as well. For any businesses watching this, is there any way that they can kind of support you as well?
Oh gosh, yes, please do. Best way you can support us. I mean, apart from, you know, we're always interested in people that are interested to sponsor or do a fundraiser or whatever, for obvious reasons. I'm not knocking that at all. But the real way you can support our community is to become part of the partnership program and get us in, help us to get you changing that mindset in your culture and making what you do accessible across the board, both for your clients as well as your staff, so that that's where you're going to make a difference and an impact and a change. And you can either contact us for that through our Autism ADHD page or our new page, which literally has only just gone out, which is myndplace.net, and you can contact us through that contact page as well. And please sign up for the newsletters both on both, because that's the best way that we get our information out to people. We all know what social media is like. As much as we post as often as we can, it doesn't reach everybody in the way that we'd love it to, but emails and newsletters give us the ability to do that, and you're more likely to be being kept up with the new stuff that is coming out all of the time. So just get in touch would be what I'd say. It doesn't matter where you are in the community, what you do, whether you're a scout leader or you're running a bank, or do you know, it doesn't matter. We can help anybody. I love it when people say, what's your target market? And I go, well, everybody actually. You know, it's more about, our target market is a cultural shift. That's what we're looking to do. And we know that we've got the strength and ability to make that impact because we've done it before. We didn't know we were doing it, but we did do it. And so now is the time for us to step up to that plate and go, come on, guys, get involved, because we can help.
And finally, just talking to that person who may be listening or watching to this conversation, who may be in the situation where they're, you know, approaching diagnosis with their family, or maybe later on in their life, they're trying to do that later on in life, and maybe they're on the fence about kind of getting in touch. What would you say to them? What would be your words of encouragement?
We know it's hard to reach out, to send that email, to take that step. If you're feeling nervous about that, please, I can't tell you not to feel nervous. What I can say is that you will reach a team that know why you're nervous, that know that you're going to be worried, that know you're going to be nervous about being judged, or maybe I'm being stupid to ask this question. Can I just say that if there was ever a team that's not going to do that, it's our team. Because we've been where you are. Every single one of us have been where you are, worried about making that call, worried about asking for something, or maybe not even be sure what it is that you need, which you'll get that a lot. What do you want? I don't really know. I just know I'm not coping. We're here to help navigate that for you. All right. And you can then make those decisions for yourself about what those next steps are that feel right for you and your family.
Perfect. You know, here at Orwell, we're passionate about, making a difference to people's lives. And we do that throughout all of our different sectors of our organization. But, you know, predominantly in regards to today's conversation, our LD support around supported housing and all that kind of stuff is hugely important. And, you know, it's why we want to have this conversation today, because I think for many of those families who we touch in those communities, there's also a point where there's huge benefit in what you do, whether it's before they reach us in supported housing or afterwards or in between. So if any of our customers are watching this, I think, you know, have a look at the information that Annie has and over on Autism ADHD. I think it'd be hugely beneficial to read through it and see if they could help you in any way. Annie, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. It's been a fantastic conversation. I think many people who may be in the situations that we're speaking about can get huge amounts out of today's conversation. And also, as someone that's gone through that process themselves and has reached out to you, you know, huge thank you from me as well, because it's been a huge benefit to my family and something that we wouldn't have been able to navigate without that. So if you need your verification, there it is. That it's a great thing to be hold of. But thanks so much again, Annie. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise. Thanks ever so much, Ross, for your time.
Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation, guys. We'd love to hear what your kind of takeaways from today were. So you can comment wherever you find this video, or equally, you can get in touch via our website. But until next time, I'm Ross from Orwell Housing, and I'll see you again soon. Take care.